On today's Habits, I've got a really special guest all the way from New Zealand. Claire Sewell is going to be talking to me all about good and bad habits when it comes to self-doubt and sales. So Claire, welcome to Habits.
Thank you. Good to be here.
No, it's great to have you. So talk to me a bit about your background in sales. What qualifies you as a guest expert in this field?
Well, expert is so subjective, isn't it? But I've never really called myself that. But I'd say I'm a specialist. I've been in the sales in the corporate world for over 20 years and leading sales teams for 8 of those. And then I set up my own business in 2016 because I realized the missing link to consistent, confident sales performance was recognizing the direct relationship between thought and like how we think and what we tell ourselves and results. So I specialize in the area of self-doubt and sales. And in my experience, very few coaches and trainers explore the depth of this relationship. And really, it's the ultimate thing we need to understand to excel in sales.
So would that be one of your first bad habits then? It's a bit lack of self-doubt. That's a bad habit to have in sales.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much bad because when people aren't aware of their thinking, it's kind of just normal. It's what we do, right? But when we're discussing self-doubt, bad can kind of lead us to beat ourselves up a bit, and we do that enough. But it is one of the biggest challenges I can see that often leads to self-doubt is focusing on the negative. So I talk about this spotlight analogy. Whatever we focus our energy and attention on becomes our reality in that moment. So when we're shining the light on ourselves, we're solely focused on us. So if you're thinking thoughts like, what if I'm not good enough for this job? Or what if they think I'm being too pushy? Or what if I can't deliver to their expectations? What if they don't like me? What if I'm too expensive? Those self-focused thoughts are going to bring out other negative thoughts, and your insecure and doubtful feelings that come with that will be amplified. So that's how you can sort of find yourself in what I call a self-doubt thought storm, because you're taking one thought and you're focusing solely on that. And then you kind of freak out about the feelings. So, I mean, just an example, I was speaking with a business owner the other day, and she said that she had one thought: what if I lose this client? Was that the thought she had? And before she knew it, in her mind, she'd lost that client, all her clients, her business had folded, she'd lost her house, and she was out on the streets, destitute. But that's how quick, right? We get into this thought storm. We go from zero to destitute in 2 seconds.
Absolutely.
We get caught up focusing on it.
It's like we have to train our brains to think positive, and that's a massive, whatever aspect in life, but especially in sales, that one negative thought I've just seen with your friends can massively impact you going forward. So what would be your second bad habit then, Claire, in sales?
Well, I speak to a lot of business owners that, they're great in their field, but they haven't really had much experience in sales or in selling themselves. So thinking that you have to be an expert right from the start, thinking you have to have the answer to everything, and fearing the practice stage, basically, because practice makes progress makes mastery. It's the practice is the key to becoming an expert. So the only reason I've become a specialist in this field is through consistent trial and error, trying something, failing, tweaking, trying again, failing, tweaking. We only learn from our failures.
Absolutely.
And our successes. So one of the biggest challenges is fearing failure.
Yeah, and sometimes even though we don't want to have it, failure actually can be the best thing that ever happens to us, can't it? It can massively reshape your vision, and it's a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, I think we have to reframe the way that we think about that word failure.
Definitely. And what would your third bad habit then be, Claire?
Well, it's allowing self-doubt to stop you from taking action, or worse, take you out of the game. Like, self-doubt is like, it's a natural part of the way we think. But because it's so elusive, it has really like a lot of mass. So it usually shows up in the form of excuses. So it doesn't actually look like self-doubt. But when we fear failure, you don't start conversations consistently. You don't get visible. You don't want to share your talents and how you can help people overcome their challenges, because you think you might be perceived as too pushy. There's that negative thinking again. So people kind of just wait for sales to drop into their laps. They don't take action.
So moving on, what would be your first positive good habit for sales?
Well, it sounds a little bit out there, but journaling is such a massive good habit because self-doubt is just repetitive past conditioned thinking. So one of the most powerful invisible forces in the human personality is this need to stay consistent with how we define ourselves. So what that basically means is the personal stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves are continuously dictating and driving our results. So thoughts become results. So where that gets quite interesting is that 95% of our thinking is completely unconscious. It's invisible to us. So our personal stories are creating our results day to day. We're not even aware of them. So we want to get visibility of those personal stories real quick because they will take you down and you don't even know about it. So that's where journaling is so powerful. And journaling, all that is just getting what's up here down on paper so you can start questioning the validity of them, the truth of them. And when you start looking at what's down on paper, you can kind of start seeing that a lot of your thoughts are just made up from old, stale, past conditioning that happened years and years ago, and they're just not true anymore.
Yeah, definitely. And self-reflection is brilliant for journaling because it massively makes you reflect on what you're struggling with. Sometimes things you wouldn't even necessarily think of. You think, I didn't think of that. But then it's on paper then.
Totally. Like it's our internal conditions are always dictating our external, but the challenge is everyone thinks out there is making me feel in here. So we've got it back to front.
Definitely. And what would be your second good habit then for sales?
Most definitely connecting to build relationships and not to sell. So remember that spotlight analogy. So you take the spotlight off yourself, so focusing on you, what's going wrong with me, or and you put it on the other person. So you take the pressure off needing to sell right from the start. So I always talk about this idea of connecting to build relationships. So speak to all the people, network, start conversations, get curious about them, about their business. Because when you're thinking about another person, when you're focusing on them, when you're connecting to build the relationship, you can't experience self-doubt. It's not possible. You can't have two thoughts at the same time. So when you're building a community around you and at the same time, what you're doing is you're building an organic pipeline, because the more you share how you help or who you help, what problem you solve, and the outcomes they get from working with you, while also focusing on building relationships to add value, you're making yourself memorable. People will either want to refer you, collaborate with you, and or buy from you. So sales becomes a lot more fun. It becomes a lot more meaningful because you're connecting to build relationships and not just to sell.
And relationships are a key thing when it comes to sales, and also listening to your client and what exactly they need. Would you say that's your third good habit then, Claire?
Third, well, listening is so important. Like we often are so in our heads about what we're going to say next, right, that we're completely missing what the person in front of us is saying. We're missing the capacity or the ability to connect with them and to hear their perspective, because we're so in our heads about what we're going to say and also thinking about what outcome we want as well. So absolutely getting present to the conversation, getting curious about them, and really employing what I call active listening is just listening with nothing on your mind. And it's very rare, like very few people do it, because what they're often doing, and it's a bad habit of salespeople, they're often trying to listen to where they can jump in and show their expertise, rather than just getting present to the conversation, getting present to what the person's saying, really trying to listen to what they need. So you can kind of, come back and mirror that and add value and helping them with what they need.
No, I didn't even think about using that method, but listening is such a crucial thing. And I think that's a really good point to end on, Claire. So, Claire, where can we find you then on social media, LinkedIn? Where can people find you to learn more?
LinkedIn, so it's Claire Sewell. I'm sales and mindset coach, or turning self-doubt into sales. And my website is www.claire@swellcoach.co.uk.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us on Habitz.
It's a pleasure. Thanks so much.